Hello, fifth graders. So yesterday we were talking about analyzing line plots. Today we're going to practice actually making a line plot. So in this problem it says the dogs in Paulina's pet shop have the following weights. The weights are in pounds. How can you organize this information in a line plot? So these are all the weights that we are already given, all of these weights right here. Now in a table it's kind of hard to see which one's the biggest, which one's the smallest, how many duplicates do we have. So in this speech bubble, it does say that measurement data that is organized is easier to use. So that's kind of why we make line plots, just to organize our information. So first, what I would suggest when we organized this data is to write down the data. In this case, it's the weights of the dogs, but write down the data from least to greatest. So in this example, in this table, we had all this data, but now if we order from least to greatest, we see, okay, the first weight of a dog is 6, and the biggest weight is 12 1/4. So that's kind of helpful for us, that the range of the data goes from 6 to 12 1/4. So what they did in the book, they made a little table to help you out. So they kind of said, okay, well, the dog weight that was 6 pounds, there was 2 dogs that had 6 pounds, that were 6 pounds. 7 1/4 pound, there was only 1 dog. 8 1/2 pounds, there was 1, 2, 3. That's why we have the 3 there. 11 1/2, 1 dog. And the rest of them were all 12 1/4. So we had 5 dogs that were 12 1/4. So now our information's really organized. So now what we can do is we can make a line plot with that data. So it looks kind of silly because they're all spread out, but it's important that you don't just make one point on the line that's at 6, one that's at 7 1/4, one that's at 8 1/2, one that's at 11 1/2, and one that's at 12 1/4. You want to still make a number line that includes all of the numbers so you can see, okay, well, no dogs are in this area, no dogs are in this area, and so on. So we counted, if you see between 5 and 6, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. So we're counting by fourths. So we counted 5, 5 1/4, 5 2/4, or 5 1/2, 5 3/4, and then 6. So you can see we put 2 dots above 6 because if we look at our table, we can see that 2 dogs weighed 6 pounds. And then we kept counting on our number line. We did 4 dashes again, counted by fourths up to 7. And then we got to 7 1/4. And if we look at our table, we can see that there's 1 dog that's 7 1/4 pounds. So we put only 1 dot. Same thing goes with 8 1/2. That's right between 8 and 9. We put 3 dots because there was 3 dogs that were 8 1/2 pounds. And 9 to 10 and 10 to 11, there's no dogs that weigh 9, 10, or 11, or in between those at all. So those are all blank. We don't have anything right there. And then we have 11 1/2 because there's 1 dog that's at 11 1/2. And then right above 12 1/4, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dots because if we look at our table again, there were 5 dogs that weighed 12 1/4 pounds. So just to recap really quick, we get all of our information. It's kind of all scrambled and confusing, and then we just organize it. Again, I would suggest just putting it in order from least to greatest, and then making your line plot based on that organized information. So let's try one together. So right now, I am on page 707 in my workbook. So if you would like to do this with me, you can turn to page 707 in your math workbook and you can complete graphing a line plot with me as I do it in the video. So I see right now they already actually gave us all of our information, very organized already. Weight of pumpkins. There's 2 pumpkins that weigh 3 1/2 pounds. There's 3 pumpkins that weigh 5 1/4 pounds. There's 4 pumpkins that weigh 7 pounds. And then there's 1 pumpkin that weighs 8 1/2. So what I'm gonna first start to do, I'm going to draw my number line. All right, so it starts at 3 1/2 and it ends at 8 1/2. So I'm gonna go from 3 to 9 on my number line. So my first number is going to be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 9. All right, now if you see though, we have fractions. So we can't just keep the whole numbers, we have to put some dashes in between. So I see 3.5 and I see 5 1/4. So I'm gonna count by fourths because I know a half is the same thing as 2/4. So I'm gonna put 3 lines. So I have 4 spaces in between 3 and 4 and do the exact same 4 to 5, exact same 5 to 6, exact same 6 to 7, 7 to 8, 8 to 9. So again, you can kind of just see that there is between 3 and 4, there's 4 spaces, so it counts by fourths. Between 4 and 5, there's also 4 spaces. 5 and 6, also 4 spaces, and so on. So now I can look at my table. So there are 2 pumpkins that weigh 3.5 pounds. So this is 3, this is 3 1/4, this point is 3 2/4 or 3.5. So I'm going to put 2 dots above 3.5. 5 1/4. So if I look over, this is 3, 4, 5, 5 1/4. And I see the number 3, so I put 3 dots above 5 1/4. And then I keep going. 7, I see 7 is right here. I put 4 dots above 7. And then lastly, 8.5. 8's right here, so I go 8 1/4, 8 2/4, or 8.5 is equivalent. And I only put 1 dot. So that's kind of what my line plot would look like if I graphed it from this table. All right, so I see 3.5, 2 pumpkins that weigh 3.5 pounds. I see 3 pumpkins that weigh 5 1/4 pound, 4 pumpkins that weigh 7 pounds, and 1 pumpkin that weighs 8.5 pounds.